Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Good. My name's Parisa Noble. I am with the Working Moms Group, and we are so excited that each and every one of you guys are here with us, whether you're at Meridian or you're tuning in online. Thank you for joining us. Also, a huge thank you to Dish Women's Network and the Children's Hospital Colorado for partnering up with us on this event. I will say I am excited to announce that the Working Moms Group and Children's Hospital are actually going to be partnering up to bring you more events just like this throughout the rest of the year. The plethora of topics that they have to cover is amazing. It's everything from broad spectrum like stress management down to child development, down to what do I do with my teenager when they get in their awkward phase. It's a broad spectrum, so we're excited to partner with them and bring that to you guys as a resource. The Working Moms Group has been around for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, and it started off as more so kind of like a club, and it's grown to become a pillar of a resource for everybody here at Dish and beyond. So our goal is to give you guys all the tips and tricks, the tools to master the art of building your career and building a family at the same time. So with that said, we welcome all of you guys. If you are a parent, if you are going to be a parent, if you are a grandparent, if you're a caregiver of any kind, we welcome you guys with open arms to sign up. We're going to be passing around a sign-up sheet throughout the seminar for you guys to jot down your email address. If you have a hard stop at 1, if you can stick around for a little bit afterwards, we have some sign-up stations right around the room as well as in the hallways for you guys to sign up for both Working Moms Group and for Women's Network. So with that said, I want to bring up Brittany. She's with Corporate and Community Relations. I practiced that like 5 times, and I still messed it up. She's going to cover a couple of housekeeping items.
Hi, my name is Brittany Diacheval, and I'm with Children's Hospital Colorado. I work on the Corporate and Community Relations team, and thank you so much for having us here today. We're really thrilled to be here with all of you. And this Lunch and Learn is one of the examples of the many ways that corporations and community partners can engage with Children's Colorado. So I just wanted to touch base on 2 things. So in front of you, you have a survey, and that is great feedback for next time we plan one of these, a topic of interest, and just what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to see in the future. So after the talk is over, if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to complete that, that would be very helpful for us. And then the second piece of information in front of you is our Just Ask Children's magazine. And this is our quarterly magazine that we publish. And on the back here, there's a website, and you can sign up, and you can receive it digitally, quarterly, or you can receive the paper copy in the mail if you provide your physical address. So those are some resources for you if you'd like to sign up.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. So let's get to the good stuff. We have Dr. Jenna Glover in the house, and she's going to cover a very important topic that I think we can all relate to: stress management and work-life balance. Jenna is a director of psychology training of the Pediatric Mental Health Institute, and she's also an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Pediatrics at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. So everyone, please put your hands together for Dr. Jenna Glover.
Hello, thank you for having me. My mic okay? Yeah, wonderful. So I'm really excited to come in and speak with you today, and really excited that just your organization has this forum to do these kind of things. And I'm really passionate about these particular topics about stress management and work-life balance, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why this matters to me as a human being and what I've done with that with my career. So I think this is a really great quote, and I think this sets a nice stage in terms of the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And so we'll talk about what that looks like today. I'm going to just immediately apologize. So I have a 1-year-old who decided to just be like super sick over the last week, and so I am on cold medicine because he got me sick, and he has not been sleeping well. So if this sucks, I blame him, and if it's great, it's because I rose to the occasion. Just take that. So my particular goals for today are understanding exactly what stress is. And I think a lot of times when we talk about stress management, it gets really cliche, right? So I need to take the bubble bath. I need to do set time for myself or whatever it is. And I'm going to try to talk about it in a really different way and help you understand the nature of stress, how it affects us and our systems, and then do things a little bit different. And this is something, I'm never going to go over there again. I'm going to just stay right here. And just talk about some of the things that I've learned in my own career. I feel like am I hearing humming? Okay, it's a plane? Okay, psychosis is not setting in. So my goal is to just talk about understanding what stress is, and then this idea of the science of what balance actually means in our life, and then creating a sustainable life. And several years ago, I was able to give a TED Talk, and my TED Talk is talking about living an energy-efficient life. And that has nothing to do with your home or the cool gadgets you have in your home, but thinking about as a human being, what does it mean for your brain to work in an energy-efficient way, and understanding how your body complements that. So that's my hope today, is maybe to just change the way we think about these things. And research has shown that you enjoy presentations more when you actually connect with the presenter and you like them as a human being. So here's myself. This is me as an adorable child, and most people love adorable children. And so I show this slide for a couple of different reasons. Man, that plane thing is going to super bother me. Does that bother you guys? You're just used to it. Okay, I keep thinking my mic is going to go off. So the reason I show this is because you'll think I'm an adorable human being, right? And the other reason is just to talk a little bit about my family and why this topic is personally important to me. So I grew up, and I was the youngest of 5 children. I had 5 older brothers, and my parents, they actually own their own business. And so geographically, if you were to look at this, we live in Utah, and this is where our home is. And this is where our business is, and they touch each other. And so the idea of work-life balance seemed like an insane thing to me, because work was life, and that's what we did. And we are the 5th generation, so we have been there for 123 years. So I've got great people who have done the business before us. And we own really 2 really interesting businesses. So we own a nursery, and not like the child care nursery, like the plant kind of nursery. And we also own a truck accessory shop. So we do campers and different things with trucks. So we do those kind of things. And all 4 of my brothers are continuing to run the business to this day. And so I grew up with the mentality that there was no difference between work and life. Work was life. How many of you grew up that way? Okay, a couple of you. And that's just kind of how I knew things. The business was right here, and I was right here, and I'm this adorable child. And because of just who I was as an individual, my brothers really got socialized into the business. And because I was a girl, I didn't. And so I had the chance to do other things. And growing up with 4 older brothers was interesting. They weren't the kind of protector brothers. They were the kind of beat the shit out of you brothers. And is that okay to say here? Hopefully you bleep that out. And I always joke that's why I went to psychology, is not necessarily because I cared about human beings, but I just wanted to fix myself. And so they are all in the family business that is right here, and they still all live right here, and I'm the only one who went somewhere else. But I really grew up with the idea that work and life are the same thing. And to be a valuable human being, you work as hard as you possibly can all of the time, which is, there's some value in that, and there's some danger in that. And so this is why I became passionate about this topic. But hopefully you enjoy who I am, and you also enjoy the awesome perms of my brothers when they were growing up in the 80s. So today, in terms of understanding what stress is, I'm going to jump into that first, and this idea of the science of balance. So stress is a really interesting thing. How many of you felt stressed today? Okay, easier question. How many of you have not been stressed today? Great, a few of you. How many of you, of those of you who just raised your hand, how many of you have never been stressed in your life? Right. So stress is universal. It's something that you can't avoid. So whenever we have some type of challenge in our environment, our body is going to respond in a way to address that stress. And one of the definitions that we look at is a state of mental or emotional strain resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. So stress is universal, but it's also unique. So for example, how many of you love public speaking? Okay, 3 of you. Would you like to take over my presentation? Did you know that public speaking is the #1 fear among adults in the United States? And which interesting to me, it's actually above the fear of flying in a plane and resulting in crash and death. Which I'm like, death seems worse than public speaking, but whatever. So there's a lot of things that all of us will feel stress at some point in our life, but all of it is very unique, right? So my wife, all day long, every single day, she worries if the garage door went down. I never worry about that. The garage door went down and I leave it. So it is universal, you can't get away from it, but it's unique, and how it affects you is different than how it affects other people. So I want to talk about a couple of the laws of stress that are ubiquitous between all of us. And understanding those laws help us think about the ways that we can manage stress. And I really am focused on not trying to manage or control stress, but what is your relationship to stress? And I want you to start thinking about that right now. Do I like stress? Do I embrace stress? Do I see it as a positive thing in my life? Or rather, do I see it as something that threatens me and who I am? And a lot of times I work with very distressed teenagers, and they tell me every single day they just want to control their emotions. And I always talk about, you want to have a relationship with your emotions. And there's no relationship that would be successful if you try to control it. So the idea is right now, just think about what is the relationship you have with stress. And is it positive or is it negative? And just let that marinate. Okay, so there's 3 laws of stress, and these, again, are universal. Stress is physical. So these are the systems in your body. So whenever you feel stress, an automatic process happens. So we have 2 processes in our body. We have our central nervous system, which is our brain, and we have our parasympathetic system, which is the rest of our muscles and our organs. And whenever we feel stress, the sympathetic system starts to activate. And so there's cool things that happen. It's kind of amazing. So our pupils dilate, and our lungs expand. We want to have more oxygen. Why do we want to have more oxygen? Well, if you have to get away from a tiger, you want to be able to move quickly. And our blood actually goes to all of our extremities. So blood doesn't happen here. The flow happens in our extremities so we can move faster. So if a tiger comes in and slashes my belly, what happens? I don't bleed out as quickly. So these are really important things for survival. The problem is we have this physiological symptom, or these sensations that happen, but we're not actually being attacked by a tiger. So how many of you have ever had your boss come in and say, hey, I just need to talk to you? Yeah, I freaking hate that. Now, the interesting thing is, even though your boss is not a tiger, what does your body do? It does this. It responds as if its life were in danger. And so your pupils dilate so you can see the environment, your blood flows in a different way. And you get ready to do that fight or flight thing. So stress has a real impact on our body. In fact, in our pituitary gland, which is in our limbic system, I call this the handy model of the brain. It's a super stupid pun, but this is the handy model. So this is our brainstem right here. So it keeps your lungs going. Our limbic system, which is all of your emotional center and sends out information about what you need to do. And this is our cortex. This is what makes us uniquely human, to think about our thoughts. What happens when you have stress is right here in our pituitary gland, cortisol is released. And cortisol is released and it activates the system. And it says you need to be ready to run the hell away from here or fight like your life is depending on it. And it's a really cool thing, but it's not necessarily very adaptive for when our boss comes to talk about us. So stress has a real physical impact on us every single day. The other law of stress is that it's functional. How many of you, if you could get rid of stress, would say, yes, I never want any stress again in my life? That's an easy response, and most of us think that, and most of the time I think that as well. But stress actually helps us. And so we've done a ton of research. This is called the inverted U hypothesis. So if you think about this, if you think of a U turned upside down, this is what it looks like. And the inverted U hypothesis is the idea that when our stress is low, we actually don't perform well. And as our stress hits an optimal level, that is where we perform very, very well. And when it gets too much, we don't do as well, right? And that makes sense. So if you've ever had like a work project that's come up and you're like, I don't really care about that. That doesn't matter. And if you think about times you haven't performed well, it's probably because you didn't care that much and your stress really didn't get to you. Alternatively, we can get completely amped up and that sympathetic system can be turned on too much and we're not able to concentrate. So even though stress sometimes is difficult, if we can hit it at the right place in the optimal arousal, it helps us perform. And so we want to figure out when is the optimal arousal. So I always talk about this with my teenagers, is if you don't care about a test, you're not going to study. And if you feel like this is the make or break you thing, you're going to be completely overwhelmed. But if you can get that optimal zone of, I need to do well on this, and if I do great, that's going to help me move forward. And if I do poorly, I can still succeed in life. That's the place you want to be. Have you ever been at this place? Yeah, you kind of know what it is. So stress is functional. Stress is also psychological. So do you guys have pens and paper in front of you? All right, I just want you to write down really quickly, what are the stressors that you consider in your life? Just jot them down. And you've got like a 1-minute blast to do this. You're all hearing that music, right? I'm not just going insane. Okay, just want to make sure. Want to make sure. So keep writing as you need to. But here's like the secret sauce recipe for what I'm talking about today. So stress is physical, stress is universal. I've never met anybody who hasn't experienced stress. But our relationship to stress and how we think about stress dramatically impacts our physical experience of stress and our energy levels. So specifically, this idea of fixed versus growth mindset. So when you look at that list, how many things would you consider to be a challenge versus how many things would you consider to be a threat? And to give you an example of this, when we think things are challenging, we bring on a positive mindset. Oh my gosh, there's this cool thing that I have to do, and I want to make sure I do a good job of it, but I feel hopeful and inspired and encouraged that I can tackle this thing. Versus, what does it feel like when things are a threat? This is the audience participation time. What was that? Man, I wish I paid you before now because that's such a good answer. You run away from it. We call that experiential avoidance. It's, oh my gosh, so there's fight or there's flight. And when you see things as a challenge, you fight. And you feel good about being in that fight. But when you see things as a threat, you flight. You run away, I can't do this. And so to give you an example, like public speaking, again, is the number one fear. And so if I see today as a challenge, I'll come in and think, wow, I really care about this topic and I want to give you a bunch of information, so I'm going to prepare. I'm going to be excited about how I create this presentation. I'm going to deliver it to you, and what happens when I leave here? I'm going to know that I did the best I could. Now, if I see it as a threat, what's going to happen here? Oh my gosh, that person in the front row wearing that, is that a buck with horns?
I would say so.
Yeah. Sweater, just thought that I was an idiot. I can't believe I said that stupid thing. I'm going to think about it all day long. How many of you have done that? A stressor is over, and yet it continues. That is when you see stress as a challenge. That despite it being over, you continue to worry about your performance on it. Versus if you see it as a challenge, it's this thing I'm going to try to accomplish. I'm going to give it everything I can. I gave it what I could, and it's done. And that's really important. So Carol Dweck, she did a ton of research. She's done this for 30 years. This has a lot of really interesting information about how we teach our children, but also ourselves. Do you consider when you encounter a challenge, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Do you think that intelligence is fixed? You either know how to do something or you don't. Okay. If you feel like you don't know how to do it, but you can learn, that's a growth mindset. That an obstacle encountered is something that I can grow from, I can learn from. And again, this is what we try to teach our children. This is really important. So how many of you were super, super praised when you got that A? And it was because of the accomplishment. It's what you did. Not that your parents came to you and said, oh my gosh, how hard did you study and what did you learn from that process? And often, really, as a parent, it's very attractive to say, you know, oh, you got this great thing. But we want to move to a growth mindset. And so stress is psychological, and it impacts the physical aspect of our body. So when I see stress as a challenge, and I see it as a growth mindset that I can learn from this. So if I completely bomb the presentation today, I can go two ways, right? I can either be like, I'm a stupid human being. I didn't prepare enough. I'm never going to be good enough. Or what can I do? I can work harder. Wow, this is the way that I felt. Next time I want to talk about this stuff. I want to make sure that I spent more time with this, and I can grow. So the idea is when you see, so these lists that you put, the idea is take inventory. How many of those things do you see as a threat to yourself, and how many of those things do you see as a challenge? Just like hands up, how many of you have at least one thing on your life that you see as a threat? Okay, that would be normal human behavior. And so the idea is how do you transition that to looking at it as a challenge or an opportunity? And how do you share that with other people, your partner, your children, the friends in your life? So I gave a TED Talk about all this stuff, and people were like, oh, that's really cool, but you're not a parent, so you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I had a 1-year-old during the last year, and I realized I didn't know what I was talking about, but so I've modified that for this. And one of the things I love to talk about is just, first of all, understanding the nature of stress. It's ubiquitous, you can't change it. It's physical, and it's psychological. And what do we do with that? So I'm going to teach you all of that now. But again, if you think about it, when stress enters our body, it comes in our pituitary gland. Cortisol is released into our system. And cortisol does this really cool thing. It helps us get ready to respond to a situation. But when cortisol is on too long, what happens is it produces more, it inhibits the production of white T cells. Does anybody know what white T cells do? They fight disease. And so if your stress response is on too long, you're not going to be able to have a strong immune system, and it's going to mess up your sleep. And so if I leave today thinking about this as a challenge, I did the best I could, and I leave here and I never think about it again, like I gave you what I could, my stress response turns off. But if I think of it as a threat, oh my gosh, they're never going to ask me back again, I'm terrible at my job, what happens? It's on all day long. So the idea, and what I talk about in terms of stress management, is stress will happen no matter what. But how do you keep it on at appropriate times to help you succeed, and how do you turn it off when it is unhealthy? The other part of stress is reducing unnecessary stressors and maximizing your body's potential. So that's what we're going to do now. Are you guys excited? Well, I want a little bit more. Okay. So I want to talk about mental health. And I really think about mental health as the idea of resiliency and how to have a tremendously effective relationship with stress. I talk really fast, and I also talk too much, so I'm going to make sure we have time for questions. I'm going to keep checking my watch. But I love this quote from Brene Brown. Daring to set boundaries is about having courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. So I'm about to talk to you about several things that will help you succeed and might shift the way that you do the work in your life, and other people may or may not be on board for that. But in small ways, you can shift people to be where you are. So I talk about this as the wisdom of watermelons. And I had a couple of friends. So I'm from Utah, like northern Utah. How many of you have seen Napoleon Dynamite? Okay, that's where I'm from. that kind of country. So I live right where Napoleon Dynamite was filmed. And I have some friends who, there's a watermelon farmer out there, and they decided, I want to make some money. And so they went and they bought a bunch of watermelons for $1 a piece. And they drove out to the country line, and they sold the watermelons for $1 a piece. Now, even as a psychologist who talks to people for a living, I get that that doesn't work. So they do this for a while, and they realize, wow, we're losing money. And so they sit back and they think, what is it that we need to do differently? And they think and they think and they think, and my one friend comes up with an idea, and she says, I know what it is we need to do. We need to buy a bigger truck. Okay. This is as good as the joke skit, so thank you for the courtesy laughs. Is that stupid? It's incredibly stupid. You have a bigger car payment, and you have more gas you have to fit into it. But the reality is, if you were at all reflect in your life, you've had a moment where you thought buying a bigger truck would solve your problems. Doing more of what you're doing, if I could just do more at work or more at home, is going to be the solution. We all do that, right? Or is that just me? Okay, cool. Thank you for the hums and the We all do that. We think if we just did more, if I just got up earlier, if I just did this, if I just did this, more is not the answer. More actually causes problems. And so what I'm about to present to you is an idea of doing things differently and adjusting the idea of 1%. So if you leave from Denver International and you want to go to New York City, you want to go to Manhattan, you adjust the plane settings by 1 degree, where do you think you end up? You end up in Washington, D.C. Okay. 1 degree difference in the start makes a tremendous difference in the destination. And that's what I'm asking you to think about today. It does not work to make huge overhauls to your life. It doesn't work. I can tell you that right now. I've done this for 15 years. I've sat in individual counseling with people. It does not work. But what I want you to leave here today with is an understanding of your relationship with stress and what 1 degree difference would look like in your life. So these are the things I want you to think about. So whenever I talk about work-life balance, there's the idea of the resource pool. And a lot of you, how many of you feel like, oh, I've got great willpower? Or how many of you ever thought, if I just had more willpower, I could do more things with my life? And the second question is the one that I get more head nods on. If I just had more willpower, stop beating yourself up about willpower. We think it is inherently a part of who we are as human beings, that we can just harness it at any time, and if we were mentally strong, it would happen. That is not how we work. So as human beings, we have a finite amount of resources that help us move forward, and this is called our resource pool. So this is the energy source we draw from when we need to get things done. All right, so these are the questions I want you to answer with your energy pool. Think of yourself as a car. And if I asked you right now, how much gas is in your tank? Okay. Some of you are like, How often does your gas light come on? How many of you can confidently say that your gas light between Monday and Friday always comes on? Yeah. My wife, her, I think, cross to bear in life is that I have a hard time understanding when my light goes on and when I actually need to put gas in the car. I ignore that. So, but a lot of times our gas light comes on. And then the idea is, what kind of mileage do you get? And you've all had weeks, right, where you feel like you get about 5 miles per gallon. No matter how hard you work, you're not moving forward. And there's probably been times when you feel like you've done really well. Well, to come to you today, the reason that I care about these topics is about probably 9 years ago, my life was a complete and total mess. And I'm a recovering workaholic, and I came by that honestly, since my family's business and our home live right by each other. And my message from my father and my mother growing up was, you just work all the time. And so when I got into my first job, I worked all the time. And I thought that was the most important thing that you could do. And one of the things I found is that at the end of every week, I was on empty. And when I started most weeks, I was lucky if I was at half a tank. And I want to talk to you about what that looked like. My metaphor is, I was probably functioning as a 1978 Dodge Dart. Okay. So hopefully none of you have a Dodge Dart and feel like defensive about that. But I wasn't getting great gas mileage. And so I want to talk to you about every single decision I was making in my day, because a lot of times we think about work-life balance in a transformative way, and we need to have certain things. But work-life balance is about a series of decisions that you have to make every single day, and being conscious of those decisions. So here's my energy tank. And I woke up every morning, and it probably happened the way that most of your mornings work, which is your alarm goes off, and you have a critical decision to make, right? Do I wake up or do I hit snooze? And snooze is followed, like, our minds are amazing. Like, snooze is followed by 30 to 45 seconds of incredible mental calculations of everything I have to change in my day if I sleep for 10 more minutes. Right, you all do that. And that's what I did every single morning. Even though I knew I had to get up at some point, I would do that. And what happened is that resource pool of those energies, it would be depleted. And that was followed by decisions that I actually had to make every single day. So what do I wear? you have to choose something to wear every single day. Should I eat breakfast? Oh, I don't know if I have time for breakfast. So I would get in my shower. What am I going to wear? I'd go to my closet, my laundry basket. I'd pull something out. I can Febreze that. It's going to be totally okay. Should I have breakfast? And what happened is before I even got to work, there was already energy taken from my tank every single day. And then I got to work, and inevitably, I would see that person that I don't really like, but I have to work with every single day, so I'd smile at them. That drains your energy. That's none of you in this room, right? Y'all love each other. But that happens. There's people that we don't totally get along with, but we just show up for anyway. That takes energy. And then I would go through my day. I'd be answering emails or meeting with people or working on projects, and I'd have this huge drop. And then lunchtime would happen. And because I felt like I was living minute to minute, I never brought a lunch with me. And so I'd be like, should I have lunch? Should I go to the vending machine? Should I just work through lunch? And that in and of itself was a drop in the tank because there was a decision to be made. Typically, I would decide I need something. What happens when you eat a little bit of lunch? Did your tank go up or down? You guys are awesome students. Yeah, your tank goes up. And so I get a little bump in my tank. And so I'm feeling a little bit better, and I start on my day, and I'm walking to my office, and my boss says, hey, can I just talk to you? Drop in the tank. And one of the things, especially early on in my career, I was so eager to say yes to everything because I wanted to be a team player, and I wanted to show my value. And I started saying yes to things I didn't know how the hell I would be able to actually do in real life, but that's what I did. And so then I would continue to do my work through the day, and I'd walk home, or I'd drive home and walk in the door, and this is where I was. How many of you are familiar with this scenario? Your gas light has come on. And then my wife, really, really well-intentioned, would come with a lovely question of, what do you want to have for dinner? Drop in the tank. And I always talk about, when you hit burnout, when somebody asks you that question, you either want to start crying, you want to hit them. And that's where I was. And this is what all of my days were looking like, is when I got home, this is how much I had to give. And several years ago, I became an ordained minister, cough medicine, minister, and I married several different people. And one of the things I always say in my ceremonies when I marry people is give the best of yourself to your spouse and not to everybody else. And what I realized is I was giving the best of myself to everybody else and not my family. And this is what this condition was, is I had nothing left to give. And you've all been here, right? In this place where a gas light is on. So why does this happen? Well, we have this part of our brain that's really, really cool. It's the prefrontal cortex. And in the prefrontal cortex, this is where all decisions are made. So we've got, again, our brainstem. This is just keeping your heart going, your lungs going. Our limbic system is our emotions. And then our cortex is where you think about thoughts and make decisions. So a lot of people ask about what is stress. I call stress decisions. Any decision you have to make in a day is stress. You either find it as an easy challenge, I've got this, or you find it as a threat. That's all it is, right? So these are called our executive functions. So every time we need to focus, give effort, remember something, act, those are the executive functions. And that resource pool that I'm talking about, every time you draw from it, it goes down. So when we think about stress management, what do you have to do? A couple of things. So try to change your relationship with stress. When stress comes up, see it as a challenge. But the second part is reduce the amount of decisions you have to make in a day that cause stress. So how do you fill the tank? Has anybody ever seen this pyramid before? Couple people. This is Psych 101. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this really interesting psychologist came up and said, hey, these are the things we need to succeed as human beings. We need to have, physiological needs, food, water, and sleep. We need to have times of the day where our stress response is not on. And we need to have times of the day where we're connecting with people. And then we also need to have times of the day where we feel good about who we are and that we're reaching our values. This is what we need. One of the things I noticed is that how I was filling my needs was completely off base. So these are called our growth needs, the top two. And I just want you to think about how much energy do you put towards the top two of feeling good about who you are and wanting to live the life you want to live. And how much do you put down here? For me, I could completely cut this off. I don't need sleep. It's okay if I miss that meal. I don't need time for myself. I just need to be there for everybody else. And I realized pretty quickly that my pyramid was out of balance. This is the formula for burnout. When we prioritize our growth before our basic needs, we always burn out. And we have seen this in our environment and our economy, right? When we just need to grow for growth's sake. And so I wanted to feel good about the job I was doing. I wanted to be there for other people. And what did I do? I didn't take time for myself. I cut out lunch. I got up early. I stayed up late. And the pyramid got out of balance. And it collapsed. So whenever you prioritize growth before your basic needs, it will always collapse. Isn't that cool? I feel like I discovered gold when I discovered this. So when I talk about mental health hygiene, how many of you have gone to a doctor's visit once a year at some point in your life just to check up how you're doing? How many of you have gone to a dentist to make sure your teeth are okay? How many of you have been to a psychologist to make sure your mental health is good? A few of you. Far less. We don't think about that, right? Doesn't matter. But mental health hygiene is prioritizing basic needs every single day, because when you do that, your energy increases and you have more in that resource pool to draw from. And really, stress management is not about doing it right or wrong. It's making sure that you have a bunch in your tank that when stress comes up, you can deal with it well. You've all experienced this, right? Like the water heater breaks in your house. And depending on where you are in your life, that is either an okay experience or is an extreme crisis, right? And so it doesn't really, there's not a key to stress management other than how do you keep that tank full? And when that tank is full, you are able to respond to crises better. So let me talk about the radical transformation I did with my life. So this is the 1973 Dodge Dart. This is my really freaking cool hybrid model, whatever car. Tesla, should we say that? Sure, why not? I'll be a Tesla. So when I get up in the morning and my alarm goes off, do I ever make a decision? I always get out of bed when my alarm goes off, no matter what. My feet hit the ground. So when my alarm goes off, feet go on the ground. And we have this research, actually, it's called, so there's this idea of cognitive sluggishness. And so if you hit snooze, your brain goes back into this warm bath. And then you throw it into this cold water. And then you go back to the warm bath and back and forth. And so there's this idea, if you hit your snooze button, it can take you up to 4 hours to be mentally sharp again in the morning versus just getting out of bed. So every morning I get out of bed. Do I have to get dressed every morning for work? You can't look this good without trying. I set these clothes out last night, and I do it every single night. And it sounds like a really stupid thing, but man, it makes a huge difference in my morning. Doesn't matter what my body image is. Doesn't. I wear the clothes that I put out, and I just rock it. And the thing that's changed is I'm a parent. I set out my kid's clothes the night before, and no matter what, that's what he wears. And we just do that. So when I go to work, guess what? I have a full tank. Now, do I still see that person that I kind of despise? Yeah, I totally do. And I still have different things that I have to do, right? Meetings, and that drains the tank. But I always take a break in the middle of the day, or the middle of the morning. So research has shown after 60 minutes of focus, if you take 60 minutes of just focusing on your breath, just your breath breathing in and out, it actually increases your resource pool. So every morning at about 10:20, I always take a break in my day and I do deep breathing. I use the Calm app. It's a 10-minute thing, and it bumps my tank. Now, do I know what I'm doing for lunch? Yeah, every single day. It's really super boring and I super hate it sometimes, but I eat a peanut butter sandwich every single day. I eat carrots, I eat an apple, I eat a banana. Sometimes I throw in Ritz crackers to get real crazy, but I do that every single day. So, and I stop, and guess what? I eat lunch, and I never look at an email or a screen during lunch, ever. And so what does that do to me? It gives me a bump. Now my boss says, hey, can you do this thing? And that still stresses me out. But now I know how much energy I have in my tank. And the day goes on, but I also know that it's really important for us to have a break during our midday. And if you eat a snack that's high in glucose between basically noon and 5, it's going to bump your tank. So every day I have a chocolate milk that's just my thing. Judge me as being a 5-year-old, but it bumps my tank. And then I have the everyday that happens. I'm meeting with suicidal teenagers, doing counseling, all that kind of stuff. My tank goes down. Now, do I know what I'm having tonight for dinner? Yeah, I do. You have to eat dinner every single day. It's really, really important for your energy pool. So Saturday mornings, my wife actually sleeps in, and I take my little kiddo, and we go to the grocery store together, and we meal plan. We're having turkey burgers tonight with avocado and tater tots, because I love tater tots. And rather than eating being a stressful thing, it's actually a really lovely part of my week, and I've just created a habit. So I know we're having that tonight, and what happens is that bumps my tank. And probably the most important thing, and I just challenge you, regardless if you have kids or not, what do you do for yourself that's guilt-free? I take my dog for a walk every single night, and that is my time. And so my wife knows that. She has her guilt-free time. I have mine. Her guilt-free time is when I make dinner, and mine is when I take my dog for a walk. And I go out there and I do whatever I want. We need time for our bodies to not have our sympathetic system activated, that we are not sleeping. And in fact, the majority of people I work with, when I teach them relaxation and they start slowing down, do you know what happens? They fall asleep. Because the only time they know how to relax their body is when they are asleep. And so this is my guilt-free time. Before I had a child, it was watching Dance Moms. Judge away, fine, whatever. But it gave me a bump in my tank. And the cool thing is, now if I want to do something different with my life, if I want to start writing more, I want to read that book, I want to connect with my family more, I want to stop using substances or overeating or exercise, how much resources do I have to do that? A lot versus here. Here I was surviving. Here I actually developed a substance abuse problem because the easiest way to make your body feel better is to engage in substances, because I had no resources to do that. So stress management and work-life balance is not about finding some special formula. It is about thinking about what are your basic needs and how do you make them automatic. They are not choices in my day. They are things that absolutely happen, and they give me more choices for the things that I want to decide about. All right, so I pick out my clothes, drops the tank a little bit, right? That's why I'm dressed so well today. Thank you very much. I make my lunch every single night, and this is how much I have to work with. My gas light is not on, and I'm able to make decisions. So the idea is, how do you orient your life to hold on to these things? Do I make mistakes? Yes, I go offline all the time. And when I start getting off course, I think about, was I doing meditation? Did I have my lunches? Was I working through lunch all this week? Was I making sure I had kind of a set bedtime? But holding on to these things down here and letting go of the idea that I need to always be there for other people, that I need to be competent about what I do. And there's this cool thing. When you prepare the soil, and the soil is rich, what happens? The plant always grows. But if you try to force the plant to grow through artificial means, it is not sustainable. So whatever you're doing in your life, where your focus is these three things, I'm going to just encourage you, how could you let that go a little bit and focus down here? Here's my suggestions. And this may or may not be what you need. How many of you have lunchtime in your calendar every single day? I would encourage you, if it's 15 minutes, schedule lunch. How many of you, so the few people raise your hands, how many of you don't look at any screens during that? Okay, cool, I have something to offer you. Don't do anything. Remember what it's like to be a human being. Because when your brain goes into default mode, you actually become more creative. And that is one of the biggest risks of technology pervasive in our society, is we've lost our creativity because we never are bored. And I know this person is in this room. You're going to the bathroom. You're not bored. You're looking at stuff, right? We are never bored. If that red light is too long, we're looking at that phone. I'm going to encourage you to increase periods of boredom in your life and schedule them out. And just notice what happens. Be a scientist and notice what happens to you. Okay. Have a set bedtime that never gets moved for work. You will never be an efficient employee unless you have a deadline. So if work can always creep into 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you will never know when to say yes and when to say no. This is the most important thing I learned when I burned out 3 years into my career. And so I go to bed at this point in my life at 9 o'clock every single night. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. But no matter what happens, I go to bed at 9 o'clock every night. Does that stupid 1-year-old wake me up? I should never call him a stupid 1-year-old, but he does. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, it feels stupid. And those things happen. But I never change that. So I know when my boss comes to me and says, can you do this project? I actually can say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. And the quality of my work has improved. I have never been more successful at the current job than any other job because of this. So never let your bedtime change. This is a small one. Pick your clothing out before you go to bed. How many of you do this? Oh my gosh, you're already doing a wonderful thing. That's a small stressor in the morning you don't need, so just get rid of it. So pick it out the night before. Pick your clothes or your kids' clothes out the night before. If they are trying to make decisions for themselves, make them do this. It's a lovely skill for them to learn. And then finally, create a small pocket of time at home or at work where all you do is exist. You don't look at screens. You don't talk to people. You walk around and you notice something that you never had before. And you let your brain have a downtime where your sympathetic system is not activated. This quote is not modified the way that I want. But it says, I've come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgent. Caring for myself is an act of survival. And one of the things, I guess if I could teach you anything, is that self-care isn't about a bubble bath. Self-care isn't about cool lotions or scented candles. Self-care is, do you have good sleep? Do you have good eating practices? And do those never change regardless of what demands you have from work or family? That's what self-care is. It's creating a great resource pool. Okay. All right, I think I have time to tell you one last story. Is that okay? Sure, right, I'm getting like head nods from people. So this is a story I talk about in my TED Talk. I talk about it every time I can talk to individuals, and I think it's really important. Man, it's probably been about 13 years since I heard this. But one night I was with my best friend, who now is my sister-in-law, and she shared this story with me about her dad, and it had such a profound impact on me. So her dad served in the Vietnam War, and he was in special operations, and they received information that there was, they had a bunch of soldiers who they needed to come pick up. And the information they received is that they were in neutral territory, that they could fly in, grab them out of there, and get them back out. And so her dad's name was Mike, and Mike got on this chopper with his other friends. They flew into this area, and they landed in this rice paddy field, and it was flood season, so there's a bunch of water. So they land in there, and the troops are in this forest. They come running out, and they get on board, and they lift off again. And as they're lifting off, they get about 30 feet from the ground, and what happens is they come under fire. And the helicopter is hit, and it actually starts on fire. And Mike realizes in that moment that he is going to have to jump in order to live. And so he jumps from the helicopter, and he lands about 30 feet below in this water. It hits him. And he talks about the last thing that he remembers is looking up and seeing the helicopter fall on top of him. And it happens in a really interesting way, that the doors of the helicopter are open, and that's what lands on top of him. So he's not crushed. And so he has this moment where he realizes, oh my gosh, I'm still alive. And he goes to get out of the helicopter only to understand that his arm is pinned, and he can't get out. And so he starts furiously trying to struggle with this and trying to get out, and he can't. And he has a really, really close friend. They've been in battle with each other for a long time. And his friend is just right outside of the helicopter, giving him cover, waiting for him to come out. And the reason he tells this story, so he's written a book about it, he's been on the History Channel about this. He talks about the importance of this was that his friend didn't stay to save him, his friend stayed to die with him. And the cool part of the story, and that's amazing, but the coolest part of the story for me was this. Mike has this moment where he looks down, and he realizes that his arm isn't stuck. He's actually holding onto his gun, and his gun is stuck. And that's why he can't get out. So he's able to let go, and they're both able to get away. And the reason that's so powerful to me is I think that whatever it is in your life or my life, we have lived this entire life experience, and we have ideas of what are the essential things we need to hold on to. Right? If you think about a soldier in Vietnam, what is the one thing you want to always have with you? Your gun. That's your safety. You have a safety mechanism that you want to hold on to and that you believe is essential for your survival. I had the same thing. And so we hold on to those things. But the reality is there are situations that we come to in life that we need to recognize that whatever we thought was essential to survive and be who we are is actually the thing that we're holding us back. And so that's what I want to encourage you to think about today. What are you holding on to? And what do you need to let go of to move forward and actually survive? And that's all I got for you. This is the part where you're hearing. So my main message is that self-care and work-life balance is really about this resource pool and getting rid of the idea that you can't take a lunch for yourself, that you can't take dinner for yourself, that you can't have a bedtime, and let go of that stuff and just make it happen and develop those routines. So thoughts, comments, as I say, compliments. I'll take criticisms, but I won't like them as much. But questions that you have. I think guilt-free time is whenever you can just go into flow and let go of the mental activity. And so if you watch The Bachelor and that's your guilty indulgence, like mine is Dance Moms, and I'm super embarrassed as a child psychologist to say that I watched that show. But it's my time where I can be horrified and engaged. Whatever it is, I think is really important. And I think be real with yourself. And so for me, I get home, I immediately have to have dinner ready for my kid, I have to be making lunches, and I probably have about 30 minutes. And so I think about what that time is, and that's my dog walking time. So whatever fits into that. But you can make it whatever you want. So also in my bathroom is one of my favorite books, and it's called Atomic Habits. Really, really cool book. I encourage you to look at it. And I make a rule whenever I pee, I spend 5 minutes in my bathroom, and I read that. But the idea is whatever small thing that you can give yourself permission to do is where you start. If that's 5 minutes, if that's 30 minutes, but at least start with 5 minutes. And whatever it is for you, just to let go. Yeah. Yeah. So part of that is where are you okay? Yeah. No judgment. No judgment. This is actually a question I get asked often. And so part of it is where are you okay to let things slide? And at the end of the day, if your underwear isn't your neighbor doesn't notice, maybe that's not a big deal. But here's where I would start. You need to eat every single week. You need to do your laundry. So do you do that at the same time on the same day every single week? Start there. So Saturday morning, I always go grocery shopping, even if I don't want to. It is, no matter what, I do it. And it has become a habit. And this is the difference. So our executive functions in the frontal lobe, every time you have to make a decision, it drains the resource pool because you're deciding, does that make sense or not? When you do something again and again and again, your memory actually gets encoded in your procedural memory, which is in your cerebral cortex in the back of the brain. So you no longer think about it. And it actually doesn't drain your resource pool. So that's the thing is I would look at the list and say, what are the things that actually have to be done every single week? And when do I do it? And start there. Now, the thing about this is to make a habit, you have to make it obvious, you have to make it easy, and you have to make it desirable. So one of the things I do is I have a little sticky note, and all week long, I write down ideas of what I want to eat, and then I just keep them up there. And then Friday night, there is a 10-minute planning session. As soon as Logan gets put down, my wife and I say, okay, these are the meals we're going to have. And then on Saturday morning, we look at all the ingredients. So I sit on the couch and she does that, and that just becomes the habit. So the first thing I would say is the stuff that has to be done, stop making it optional. It's not. Eating is not optional. Doing your laundry is not optional. Sleeping is not optional. So what are the habits? Make it easy, make it desirable. I also work out every single morning. That's why I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I walk my dog and then I do exercise. Where do you think I put my workout clothes? Next to my bed. They're right there. So every morning I get up, my alarm goes off, and I pick them up. And so you want to have those cues to make it easy for you. Now, should you do all this at once? No, 1%. Do one thing different next month, 1%, and do it for 4 weeks. And don't do anything else. Because 1% difference will take you where? Completely different destination. So if all you can do, screw the laundry, wear the dirty clothes. Your underwear isn't stinking enough yet. So if all you can do is say Friday night, we're going to just brainstorm for 5 minutes our meals, that's what you do. And you do that for 4 weeks. And then you go from there. Just one thing at a time. That's the only way change happens. But if you try to do too much at a time, it will never happen. So thank you. Great question.
How do you mitigate stress about like that arises from things that you cannot control?
Right, unexpected stressors. So things that
You know that it's not in your hands, you cannot influence it in any way.
So the question is, how do you mitigate stress that is absolutely out of your control? So from a psychological perspective, we call this radical acceptance. And so whenever you encounter a problem, there's 4 solutions. So the other day, I actually had, there's this cool opportunity we have to do these talks at the hospital. And obviously I love public speaking. That's like kind of my jam. And I'd worked for weeks to do this. And all of a sudden there was just traffic on 225, and I was clearly going to be late. So the things you can do is solve the problem, change how you feel about the problem, make the problem worse, or radically accept it. It is so if you can solve the problem, do it. When I'm in traffic, can I solve the problem? No, that asshole in front of me is still there. Can I make it worse? Totally, I can like slam into that car and be like, oh! Can I change how I feel about it? I tried. That's a really hard one. So I tried to be zen. So what I did instead was radical acceptance, which is, okay, I'm going to be late. So I can either get worked up about it, or I can say, I am upset about it, I'm frustrated about it, and I know that I can't do anything about it. So I can rehearse my talk during this time. I can think about what I'm going to tell my boss when I show up late. And I can enjoy this cool podcast, because the reality is I got 15 minutes and I can either burn through it being super upset, or I can burn through it enjoying something. And so radical acceptance, I think, is really the task is, can you change the situation? Can you change how you feel about it? And if you can't, what does it take to fully accept this isn't going to change? I don't like it, but what do I do with this time? Right? It's like waiting for a ride at Disneyland. You can be super mad for the next hour and a half, or you can play a fun game. I got reined in once when I was camping, and all my friends complained, and I decided to leave the tent in the dripping mess, and I just positioned myself out, and I looked at the stars, and I was like, this is a cool experience. And just let the rain come on me. Radical acceptance is what I would say. It is way easier to do that when your tank is full. When your tank is empty, you're not going to do that. So. Other questions? I haven't heard any compliments yet, so if you want to like do those after, I'll be at the back.
All right, let's give one round of applause for Jenna.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jenna.
Thank you so much.
Children's Hospital of Colorado. Thank you, the Working Moms Group, and those Lee, Dish Women's Network, our training manager, for putting this event together. Hope you guys all enjoyed this event. At least took away one little nugget. I have not eaten lunch yet, so that's the next thing I will be doing. So if for those of you that are not members of the Dish Women's Network or Working Moms Group and are interested, there's computers around here to sign up. For those of you on the web, you can go to the Hop and go to Dish on Dish resource groups, and then you can link to either of those groups there. And so once again, thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Children's Hospital of Colorado, and hope you all enjoyed this, and thank you all for coming.